And we are live.
Ooh, wow. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yes, it has. Yeah. How are you doing? Is everything calmed down with the work, or is still people? Or I guess they didn't say anything. So
No,
it's
so I have no
calmed down?
fucking clue. Right. All I know is it's been 2 weeks since my exposure to the person, and I have not developed symptoms. So I'm either asymptomatic, in which case you're welcome,
Yeah. Thank you.
or I'm fine.
If you gave me the asymptomatic version, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're still in lockdown in Japan.
It looks like they're
It's
planning
end
to
of the month.
extend a
Yeah.
quasi-lockdown to
Yeah.
like 5 of the prefectures. Hey, Olympics, 10 weeks away,
It should
and
be
they're
fine.
still going ahead.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Nice. Well, let us know in the
Ridiculousness.
chat how we're doing sound and video wise. I'm using the other
You meant pandemic-wise.
or pandemic wise.
Japan, not great.
How are we looking? Are we looking warm? Are we looking sweaty? Yeah. So let us know sound and video wise how it's going. I'm using the other software this week, so hopefully there will be no freezes.
Oh, yeah.
Can't.
I'll try and keep my eye on that.
Yes.
Still going. Okay.
Well, why don't you sit back a little bit? There. Yeah. Sorry, I got the logo. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, and maybe the mic towards you. Well, there we go. Perfect. All right. Sorry. Yeah, I
Now
had
people can hear what I'm saying,
I had everything all screwed
which means
up.
everyone will leave.
Everyone just logged off. That's
Yeah.
so weird. All right. So we should be good here.
Cool.
All right. So let's do this. Welcome to the Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And this week on the Weekly, Apple lawyers attack itch.io.
Yeah, saw that.
A new edition of Age of Sigmar.
What? Okay.
And Games Workshop is abandoning Japan.
Oh, really?
Well, I have the evidence. I'm suspecting this. This is my conspiracy theory. There's been, of course, just like everything else, there's no official statement from Games Workshop, but I'm starting to suspect, and I wonder what this actually means.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's start with the Apple and Epic lawsuit. So yeah, Epic Games is suing Apple to get into their little walled garden and allowed. The lawsuit is to allow Epic to sideload apps onto iPhones, basically, because Apple just only allows, unless you jailbreak the phone, you're only allowed to load things from the Apple Store.
Interesting.
And the 30%, they're saying 30% is not good, and we don't want to pay that. And they have allowed in other cases other companies to sideload and not really say anything, because so basically the app just takes you to a website that then you register with a credit card, and so then the billing and the fees are all completely different because you're not downloading it
Through
from Apple.
Right.
So the subject of itch.io came up because the Epic Store on PC has an app that allows you to download games onto your PC from itch.io.
Yep. Saw that. Yeah.
And the term unspeakable games came up.
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
So so it offers indie games, an indie game storefront from itch.io as an app in the Epic Store. And Apple is trying to use this as a weapon against Epic and saying, just trying to discredit Epic. And that's a little bit of a ridiculous stance, and we'll talk about why in a sec. But so-called adult games that were so offensive we cannot speak about them here was a statement that kept going into the record as the attorneys discussed. And, attorneys, they are legally representing a company, but I hope, like, morally or spiritually or whatever, they're not representing, Apple, because they say whatever they need to say to win a case. But it's pretty lousy. So Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic, is a little bit confused about what itch.io I think is, because in the announcement when the app went on the store, he said they have at least hundreds of games. Well, the real number is like 200,000 I think games downloadable. So maybe Epic doesn't even know what they're dealing with. But a game that did come up that is downloadable from itch.io is a game called Sisterly Lust that includes a list of fetishes, which includes many words that are not appropriate to speak in federal courts. So that's when the unspeakable game thing came up. And Apple has always had, since 2016, they always told developers things like, if you want to criticize a religion, write a book. If you want to describe sex, write a book or a song, or create a medical app. Don't make a game. That they don't want. There's things that they have decided they don't want you to make apps about. And the judge is kind of paying attention to this, so this might not be great for
Itch.
For itch and Epic, Epic in this case. But the thing that's kind of objectionable that a lot of people are a little bit bothered by is, Apple is going after a platform that's particularly favored by queer developers that offers depictions of sexuality you won't find in big budget mainstream games. And Apple has always been inclusive, and their CEO is, he should be aware that this is making it look bad. They're attacking a queer platform, basically. And so that's why people are, not happy about this.
And that's why a number of Unspeakable Game Jams
yes,
popped up in response to that. Yeah.
Right. So there, until July 12th, the Unspeakable Jam is one of the jams running on itch. Just in response to this, I think developers are a little disgusted that this position they're taking in court, just to get some leverage against Epic. I mean, it may not actually be the company's position, but the lawyers are putting this in a public record, and they're representing Apple.
Right.
So there's online. There were some transcripts of kind of the discussion and kind of how the attorney was wailing on the Epic kind of brand manager about this, and it's all just the same kind of legalese. But the Unspeakable Games came up. So so we'll see how that goes, and I don't know whose side even care about. I mean, Epic is disgusting and Chinese funded, and Apple should know better than to do this. I mean, I think they're hurting their brand a bit by putting this kind of public stuff in the record.
Yeah, I don't really have a side other than like other people have said it a lot better than I possibly could, but it's like a platform like itch needs to exist specifically because it can host that kind of content. So.
Yeah, because a lot of you're going to get because even I think Steam has a hard time. They censor games a lot, and they've removed a lot of games, so it's not easy. Like they championed indie development a lot, but and Apple has always kind of done that ever since the early iPhone development. They've been very friendly to indie developers. So this is weird. Yep. This is so weird. I mean, not friendly financially,
right? Okay,
but they
put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah,
then,
they featured work, but they take a big cut. So that's
the thing. Like taking cuts. I guess that brings me up to the fact that Friday, I think U.S. time, but I couldn't tell you what time zone. Itch is doing its first creator day where they're not taking their normal relatively small cut from any sales on Itch. So kind of like those Bandcamp Fridays, they're doing 100% of whatever you pay for a game on Itch is going directly to the creator. And probably for about a period of 24 hours, but I couldn't tell you what time zone it starts in. So if you have a game in a collection on Itch that you've been kind of waiting to buy, now is the time to do it. Yeah. But I haven't, not being a really video game person, I haven't paid attention to the video game side of Itch or Steam or any of the kind of other stuff. But I don't know. I think being friendly to something, I mean, it's kind of like anything with big corporations and capitalism. They kind of only care how much money they can get off you, right? So, and once it stops being profitable or whatever, you're just go fend for yourself, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, that's their image is just, to kind of differentiate themselves from Microsoft, basically. Yeah. So, we'll see. And this isn't, I don't think anybody is really rooting for either side of this.
I think at least in my little circles, what a few people were concerned about is, does this mean people are going to take a bigger look at Itch, and is Itch going to start seeing not legal trouble, but just kind of trouble? Are people going to come in and try and start censoring games or whatever,
right? Or just making it becomes a problematic link or it's censored, or you'll get pop-ups that say this may contain offensive material. Yeah,
that's what people are concerned about in my little spheres, which I would agree with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, have you recovered from the Warhammer Fest online yet?
I guess so, since I didn't know it existed.
So over Golden Week, so it was actually a week ago, but over Golden Week, Games Workshop had their Warhammer Fest, but they did it, of course, all online. And an online fest is just scheduled streams, and so it was just a bunch of announcements. But it's face-to-face kind of talking to developers, so it's not just flashy videos or press statements. It's actually the people that worked on the games, people who work at the company, kind of presenting stuff in a casual, kind of Zoom meeting way. So on the final day, they had a big surprise, and everyone was like, "Yes, Warhammer Fantasy is coming back, and I can't wait." And so there's all speculation about what the last day's announcement was going to be. Big news! They announced the 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar.
Okay,
Yes.
As someone who spent far too much money in high school and early university on Games Workshop, worked at Games Workshop for a little bit, I've fallen off the bandwagon. How long has Age of Sigmar been out? Because it does not feel like that long. What, 5 years?
It's on 2015 was the first edition release.
Okay.
They're kind of on a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
And I was really surprised when 9th edition Warhammer 40K was announced during the lockdown. I mean, they literally said, there's nobody in our warehouses to sell you anything. Here's 9th edition, and here's the Indomitus box set. And so they had production trouble with that.
Right.
That sold out immediately, and they're going to do this all over again. I mean, they're already having... So the transparency and kind of communication of Games Workshop has fallen off very seriously in the last couple of years, and they started to kind of handle their social media a lot better and present things. And Warhammer Community was kind of a way they would kind of tease things and like, here's what's coming, get excited. And they've had a couple of huge stumbles recently, and no word about what's causing this and why. And it may just be because they don't want shareholders to know. They don't want to affect stock prices because they had some they've had really good quarters during the pandemic. So they're trying to, and they've been on a weird kind of new release schedule. So every week there's been new releases just constantly, a lot of, Age of Sigmar boxed games and things. So they've been on this schedule. And Warhammer Fest, that was the first 2 weeks in years that they haven't had any new releases announced. And it seems like they do need to be playing catch up a little bit, because one of the big problems they had, this was related to Age of Sigmar, was the Warhammer Quest kind of follow-up. The next big game that came out was Cursed City.
Which I saw a lot of people talking about.
Yeah, and it was a mess.
Oh, really?
The game was only on sale in like Western countries for like 5 minutes, and then it was sold out. There was no, like Indomitus, then they said, whoa, this is more popular than we thought. Let's do a made-to-order kind of like, you order it. We can't guarantee when we're going to produce it, but we'll eventually get it to you. Right. It disappeared from the website. And the funny thing is, I'm still getting like promotional mail with a link showing that game. You click on it, it's just a 404 on the site. So there was a casual Twitter announcement from somebody that said, we never said it was going to be a permanent game. They did, but so it's very similar to Blackstone Fortress. Okay. It was a box game with a setting that was, like a Warhammer Quest game, and they were going to add expansions to it to kind of give you a complete story and kind of add to it. And everyone thought that's what Cursed City was going to be. It just disappeared, and we don't know why. I mean, Brexit happened, the Suez Canal blockage happened. There's a lot of weird things that happened that you could point fingers at, may have screwed up their supply chains. And but nobody knows, and they're not talking.
They're not saying, right?
Yeah. So it's all speculation, and so now we have a 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar, and it's going to come with a box. They've announced it's going to have a box set, and so is that going to have? Because they've already had 2 big releases that they hyped, Indomitus and Cursed City, that they've totally fumbled on. Scalpers have just grabbed up. There was, interestingly enough, on Japanese Amazon, there were about a dozen copies of the English version of Cursed City that just sat there for a while, and I think because
and you didn't buy one.
Well, I didn't say that, but the price though of the Japanese, even the English edition of Cursed City, is basically the scalper price. So if you go on eBay and you get someone that's doubled the price, that's what the Japanese price was. So it wasn't really saving anybody. You had to be really desperate, to do that, because things are still floating.
Which is why you didn't say if you picked one up.
I didn't, but I did know that the store in Namba received 2 English copies.
Oh,
I do know that for a fact.
And now they only have one. Mysterious. Yeah.
But
I don't know. Interesting. Like, but being charitable to Games Workshop, are big boxes like that the entry point to the hobby? And like, do they sell better than other stuff? And are they a way of kind of, onboarding people and saying, hey, here's a new one? And I don't know, like with anything with editions, if it's too quick between editions, you're kind of like, well, I kind of feel like I wasted my money. But I don't know. If you're also doing like tournament stuff, then you do have to address issues. And I mean, like, it's a lot easier when you have like a card game like Netrunner or something. You can be like, hey, here's a new band list.
Right.
Whereas with like a miniatures game, you're gonna be like, okay, well, now I can't use these miniatures, which is kind of why I fell off of War Machine a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so I'm not sure. And the boxes, they have done a good job with these kind of new edition boxes of giving you a really good, it's been a lot of push fit models,
Right.
but it's been a really good way to get two decent sized forces with new rules. And they've been giving hardback. This was in the Soul Wars,
Okay.
a hardback copy of the 2.0 rules. So they've been doing a nice job of like you're right up to date and
Right.
you're kind of ready to go. You just have to start buying the codexes, but usually they give you the mini kind of at least the stat lines
Yeah.
for everything. So it is, I think, an entry point. And the thing that's strange about Age of Sigmar is the lore is still kind of a mess, and it's kind of like whatever. So they're promising we're gonna, things are gonna start evolving and become more clear, and they're moving forward. So they're kind of introducing more new Stormcast Eternals, and the look of them so far is a little bit more kind of Greco-Roman inspired. So round shields and spears, and it's like more of this, but so I don't know. And they're also talking about taking away the kind of ambiguity and interpretation problems with any of the rule set. Like they're really trying to get it as playable and inflexible, or like you can't confuse judgments as much as possible. So there's no details about the release, but this year,
this year,
yeah.
okay.
There's been no date, but they are talking about a core box like they did with second edition, the Soul Wars edition, and it's going to move ahead the storyline and kind of refine the rules. And we'll see. I don't know, because it's still like way behind 40K. 40K is still their big,
40K's been around since early 80s.
Yeah. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. I'm not sure. It's 3 years seems a little soon. I haven't played a single game of second edition. It's in the 3 years that it was out, and I picked this up just broken out of a box, like cheap on eBay because of I wanted to see the lore and a lot of what was going on just for kind of role play reasons.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see how this continues things, and if it kind of moves forward, because now the thing. Because I guess in the second edition, a necroquake happened, and so it's endangering the realms, and death is kind of was a prominent faction. And now in third edition, they're going to do something where the reforging, where the Stormcast Eternals kind of like reincarnated.
Right.
There's something that can prevent that from happening now.
Okay.
So make them more threatened, or possibly less immortal.
Well, I mean,
less eternal.
Yeah, I mean, if you did have like these immortal beings who can just keep getting reforged and reforged again, you're just like, seem kind of overpowered. Okay,
right. Yeah. So so second edition was out 2018. So they're on a 3 year cycle, and I don't see the necessity to enforce this 3 year cycle because people still can't get together and play. Even though North American Games Workshop is saying in-person events are back on starting like in the later half of this year, so they're going to try to push that pretty hard.
Well,
but we'll see.
I wonder if you kind of have to, because I mean, let's face it, GW is a physical miniatures company.
They gotta They got to keep.
You can't play with that on a tabletop.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's not saying there aren't hobby aspects that you can spend lonely time assembling miniatures and painting miniatures, but for the segment of the GW hobby that focuses on playing, they've been out of luck for the pandemic. Not without very valid reasons,
of course,
but yeah, I'm sure GW is thinking about that.
And I think it's probably people's optimism and a lot of like extra free time or working from home that's made them like buy too many models.
Free time from working at home. Anyway,
but buying too many models and doing a lot of like solo hobby stuff, and that's helped their bottom line. But I don't know if they need to keep pushing new editions when I don't think they got all the kinks ironed out of the previous.
I guess maybe like we've been kind of talking about this a lot, but how do you do a cleanup of a rule set like that without doing a new edition? I mean, it would be what, Age of Sigmar 2.5?
Yeah.
Or do they want to put out like a PDF document that says, here's all your errata and rules changes? It's kind of, I mean, we experienced that a little bit with a little bit of that with like Netrunner and stuff, and I think it's just kind of, it's a stopgap.
Yeah. Well, kind of what they seem to be doing between the editions too is doing a big event. So they did this Broken Realms event, which kind of is the introduction of the big thing that's going to happen that kind of creates 3.0. Okay. So they do that kind of thing, and that's a shame because that happened with me at the end of Warhammer Fantasy. That's why I was kind of like paying attention to first edition Age of Sigmar, because really great stuff was happening, amazing models were coming out, and then the old world is just gone now.
Yep. Boom, Ragnarok, and now Age of Sigmar.
Now there's this. Everything's got a weird name, and it's kind of similar, but not really. And
did we mention it's because we can trademark that name?
Yeah. So their most recent, the big pre-order for this month was for the Soulblight Gravelords.
Okay.
So what fantasy faction do you think?
Death?
That's Vampire Lords.
Oh.
Yeah. But so the models are beautiful, very dynamic and amazing, but it's like Soulblight Gravelords. Okay, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
So so everything has got to get a new funny name. And speaking of Games Workshop, I don't think they are long for the Land of the Rising Sun. They may be abandoning us.
Really?
So what is my evidence?
Yes, I want to hear this.
So the first thing I noticed is Hobby Japan, so one of the biggest hobby magazines, monthly hobby magazines. As soon as the physical stores appeared in Japan and they were localizing the games heavily, like everything was being very localized, they were having a segment and they were introducing the new models and showing the assembled and painted models. And that was weird because I just seeing it's usually Gundam and plastic model kits. So everything is Japanese properties and some like licensed, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings model or statues and things. But this was amazing. So Games Workshop, and then some of the hobby magazines were releasing like special issues about games, like Citadel paints and Games Workshop, the modeling on this like 28mm level wargaming. So it was introducing the hobby a lot and getting a lot of support. Probably because of some money passing hands.
I'm sure. Yeah,
but that disappeared last year.
Okay.
And I was like, I liked kind of looking because the Japanese aesthetic and especially the painting aesthetic for Warhammer was very different and very interesting. And I'd like to check that out. That's gone. But I just heard that the translation group in England will no longer be producing the Japanese language version of White Dwarf.
Okay.
So Japanese White Dwarf is ending.
Did it actually say it's ending?
It's ending.
Or it's not being like pushed off to another group. It's just like
no, it's ending. They're not going to. I mean, unless there's a huge outcry. I mean, they may be, but as of now, the official
Japanese language,
Japanese language White Dwarf is no longer being produced, and so those couple of things were making me very worried about the future. I mean, will we still have physical shops? Because
correct me if I'm wrong. We only had a physical GW shop, or one that I knew of, which is not the same thing, fairly recently.
Yeah, it's been about 5 years now.
Yeah.
So those popped up. All the major cities in Japan got a Games Workshop. So it is a very new thing, and maybe like Burger King and Wendy's, they may say, let's cut our losses, and you can just online everything.
Or do what we did before, where it's little like specialist game shops that are inside a little apartment on a complex.
Yeah, so we'll see if that happens, and we'll see if they're going to still, take these big rule books and translate them. I mean, they're still doing it for, German and Spanish and Italian, so I don't see why they wouldn't do it for Japanese. But
shipping?
White Dwarf is,
You realize you listed the Axis powers there. German, Italian. So why not for Japanese as well?
They like their fantasy war games. What can I tell you? So I was, and also the recent price hike.
Okay.
So Japanese prices are not corresponding to any other region's prices, and they're getting more in line with Australia.
Right.
So they're just assuming everything is coming from very far. Nothing's going to be warehoused or stocked domestically, and so the prices have gotten insane. So that's why the Cursed City existed for so long here, and that's happened. And that was the other thing, that things that sold out immediately, like the Sisters of Battle box and things, they sit on shelves in Japan. There's just not the demand for them, and so it's becoming very obvious that they're starting to kind of step back and say, we might just make this online.
Total speculation here, but I wonder if that's because Japan already kind of has a large hobby thing that is basically kind of like Gundam or other kind of like plastic model kits, where, I mean, okay, this is just rampant speculation. You're also talking about a country where space to play a game is a huge premium compared to like other countries. I mean, like, think about trying to get together to play a board game. I mean, like, you're looking at tables that are probably like largely this size, so that limits what you can do. And if you're looking at like a big 4x6 table, that's what, like 3 tatami mats. And when your bedroom is like only 5,
Yes.
where are you storing this? Or where are you playing a game? So yeah.
No, that's very true. And I think we would have seen more in the kind of the hobby areas. We would have seen more shops open with the big 4x6 tables, for people to play. Only one shop actually did that. So
And they're out of business now, aren't
no,
they?
they're
still
yeah.
around. Okay.
But the tables are empty every Saturday.
Oh
so,
yeah. Because I knew the one place I used to go to buy War Machine stuff. Didn't buy 40K stuff. They had 2 tables, but you had to squeeze past people to get into the place. They moved to a larger location that was huge. No, this is great. I went there a couple times to play War Machine games, and then after that it was like you said, they're empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have since moved to a different spot because I doubt they could pay the rent on that huge place.
Yeah.
And even the GW tables in the official GW shop down in Namba are
they're tiny. Yeah.
They're also empty.
Yeah.
Every time I've stopped by.
Yeah.
So
I've seen a few. There've been a few weekends where it's kind of really people are going nuts because they let you paint there and everything.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that kind of space at home, it gives it a chance to try all that out. But so I'm very suspicious. So it just seems like there's a lot of signs that it's just going to end. Things end real suddenly in Japan
they
too.
do.
So I'm a little worried about that.
1 week you're hiking down to find a Wendy's, and the next you're like, wait, it's gone?
Yes.
Wow, that's a little bit loud. Sorry.
Oh no. So
Just convey my disappointment at Wendy's disappearance from Japan.
So this combination of factors, this kind of not really caring about another edition of Age of Sigmar, and being a little bit concerned that we may lose an actual physical store for getting anything Games Workshop, and them not announcing anything about Warhammer Fantasy, made me look around a little bit online, and there's something that very interesting that happened during the lockdown, in 2020 during the lockdown. So everyone kind of they did their solo gaming.
Right.
There was something they did to kind of mentally cope with what they were going through. And one of the things that's really kicked into high gear is support for the 2000 the Warmaster miniatures game that was done for. So Warmaster is 10 millimeter Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
Oh, okay, right.
So this is a Rick Priestley system, and basically it's the same system he's now using for historical. And I think they did do historical.
Okay.
They within Games Workshop, they did do historical, at least army lists and things. I'm not sure about miniatures. And so he's moved to Warlord games, and so the Black Powder system and Hail Caesar, and I think a lot of those systems are based on this Game Master system. Okay. And basically, it's so it's not quite epic. Epic is 6 millimeter. This is a little bit bigger, but it's still that kind of symbolic thing where the units represent hundreds of troops.
Right. You got a stand of troops.
Yeah, you're kind of abstractly representing these armies, but for position and everything. Yeah. And it's a lot based on a general giving orders to troops. And so what's fun about fantasy is some of your troops are stupid like giants and trolls, and they're like, "What? What did you say?" So there's more unpredictable, powerful units with unpredictable response. And so this has just kind of been taking off and nurtured by. So originally, the second edition, there was no second edition. They stopped publishing in 2009, the official Warmaster. And Warmaster Revolution was this fan project that started out in the Czech, kind of the Czech community of Warmaster. It said, we're not going to let this die. We love playing this game. So they worked on Warmaster Revolution, which is basically the fan project 2.0. And so it supports everything, because basically the original book gives you a very core army list, but then they printed gazettes and magazines that added, Chaos Dwarves and Vampire Lords and everything extra.
You're not talking about Deathblight Grave Lords or whatever?
Oh, no, yeah. And so that's the funny thing is that this move to Age of Sigmar and them moving away from those they're just kind of discarding, dwarves and elves and, so wood elves and dwarves and everything are just discarded. And so people are picking them up as far as artists. So what you're finding on and a lot of Patreon-backed artists is a lot of 3D artists that are producing STL files, and some companies that are actually printing the files or producing them both in resin or metal. 10 millimeter miniatures on little strips, for this 10 millimeter war game, tactical war game. And so there's a lot of Patreons with a lot of amazingly detailed, like 10 millimeter stuff that is like a step above, because there's always like free models floating around, but the quality is very simple. There's people experimenting with 3D, so a lot of the free stuff is not amazing, but really talented people doing Patreons, and it's like they are obsessed that I'm going to do every army that's ever existed for this game. And the fun thing that they're doing is it looks retro, like they're giving it like a nice retro style. They're not upgrading it, because 10 millimeter you would have like hands and arms like the thickness of human hair. So to make them kind of chunky, and so they look like old 90s stuff. And this has been something in historical that's been going on for a while, because when Rick Priestley moved to Warlord, they continued a lot of historical Napoleonic and historical things. And a lot of British companies have done metal in different scales to support those games. So there's always third-party development. Right. But this is great because it's like a specific artist, it's kind of or a group. It's probably like a sculptor and somebody kind of digitally optimizing them for printing and everything. But groups of people that are running these Patreons that are doing these like incredibly just really nice old school sculpts that really just like hit you right in the feels. Yeah, you're like, oh, this is great. So I started and it gave me a reason to plug in the printer,
3D printer,
and actually see how these came out, and they come out amazingly well. And so I produced 2,000 point armies in a day. Like, it is insane.
How much space does each army take up?
Oh yeah, and like nothing. I mean, they all the units fit in basically the size of an average shoebox, like just the base of that. Yeah, they're really tiny. The real tiny strips, and so the base. They're 33% like smaller than like a standard fantasy. So just think about how much a fantasy is on the table, and then like a third of that. And because of the photo resin, they're really light too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that worked out really well is, so everything is metric. Because of that scale, you can use metric, and the numbers don't get too big. And the nice thing is, in Japan, they make those pre-cut magnet sheets that are 20. Is a 20 by 20. So the bases are all 20 by 40. So you just take two of those magnet sheets, and you can you just pre-cut everything out. Everything can stick down, and then it's heavy enough, because a lot of people, they have bases you can print, and then they have spaces to put washers or pennies in the bases, because they're just too light and they just fall over. But with the magnet sheet on the bottom, that's heavy enough to keep everything. And it's amazing. It's really amazing. So there's a couple of people. So I would recommend, if you want to take a look at what's going on, if you look for Forest Dragon. Forest Dragon has a Patreon, and there's a Facebook group for Warmaster and everything. Those sculpts are amazing. Mostly sticking with the kind of good side of things, elves and empire and everything. I mean, the not destruction, the not destruction-y part of things. And also Ian M. Standing has a YouTube channel that goes through the rule sets and then does faction kind of spotlights on every faction that's available. And those are great. Those are really great videos if you want to kind of get up to speed. And what started all of this, I think, or what started like everybody saying, oh, I've been thinking that too, is Geek Gaming Scenics, like Luke APS on Geek Gaming Scenics did this video. And I saw the title of it, and he does a little clickbaity title sometimes. But I saw this title, and I'm like, wait a minute, this might be good. And the title of the video was Make Warhammer Small. Okay. And his thinking was, it's so, to get into a large scale, strategic game, it's very daunting. Yep. And he's a big Kings of War fan, and just had the idea, well, we're stuck in this pandemic and I only can play with my brother. What if I just shrunk everything down, like cut all the rules in half and just printed things small? And so looked around to see what kind of fantasy models were out there, and basically did Kings of War, like that you could just stick in a shoebox, just with like minimal terrain and a couple of armies, and just use the same rules but just half everything to work very well. And but it's like, wait, and so people have already been supporting this. Like, this game exists, like the fan supported Warmaster has existed, and people have been producing models for it, and they're getting close to just about everything exists. Like, from some artists, someone has produced, because people kind of specialize in like orcs and goblins, or chaos or whatever. So, and certain artist styles fit better certain things. But yeah, it's amazing. It's really, so I was really inspired, and it's something that gives you that old world fantasy back, and you don't have to worry about Age of Sigmar, and it's a totally unenforceable, unlicensable. Games Workshop is not going to be able to do a thing about it.
Important fact: it also fits in a shoebox.
It is, yes, right. And so for Japan, it's like that's amazing to be able to produce stuff of that size and so quickly too.
Yeah.
Because the how fast that comes off a printer is amazing. So yeah, that's become a recent obsession.
So we're playing this one.
Yes, as soon as possible. Yeah. So and that's kind of been, so if you're curious about why there hasn't been any unboxings or anything on the channel between the weeklies,
no boxes.
Yeah, I've been printing like crazy. So there'll probably be some tutorials and some 10 millimeter painting, because there's a lot of different things to consider on that scale. Like your sand has to be finer, your flocking has to be smaller. Like you can't, use the same sort of materials you would use for your 28, because they're just be standing tall weeds.
Is that a sand grain or a boulder?
Right. Yeah. So I'll put links to everything that was kind of inspiring for Warmaster, and I definitely want to give this a try. It's a great system. Like, it's a really efficient system, and the army lists are based on Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition. Okay. So pretty limited. And then just as the editions came out, they added more. But because it ended in 2009,
there's not a lot.
There wasn't. It didn't go. Yeah, it didn't go too far beyond. I think they did make it to ogres, and so there's.
The ogre kingdoms.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
So there's a little bit for everybody, and the not just the factions, but the unit choices are much smaller. But there is also, I didn't look into this as deeply because I really like the Warmaster rule set. But there is also Minihammer, and Minihammer is basically taking Warhammer down to 15 or 10, and then just using the standard rules.
Oh wow, okay,
but just like shrinking everything.
So Minihammer,
yes,
is the opposite of Inquisitor. Because I've seen people scaling up their Sisters of Battle, especially to like 40 millimeter.
Right.
Which that was the scale of Inquisitor. Yeah, talk about a flop of a game.
That's right. So it would be, but that's the really cool thing about 3D printing. I mean, the things that are designed specifically for 10 millimeter will look ridiculous at like 52 or whatever. But people are doing just generic things that you're basically given the 3D file, and you can hack them up and do whatever you want to with them in a 3D program, and to get them to print how you want them. So you can scale up or scale down just about anything depending on the detail of the original sculpts. So that gives it so much flexibility, and this is kind of what I was waiting for, and makes it a little less heartbreaking if we lose all of our physical gaming stores. Is I'll just then support games that are going to support 3D printing, because you can do some really amazing stuff, and the price and the quality of the photoresin, the FLA printer, are amazing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, it's a viable thing to do now. And the thing is, the resin is a little more fragile. It's more fragile than metal. Definitely much more fragile than the plastic cast that traditional minis come in. But you can just print another one.
So it's kind of like a step up from the paper minis.
Yeah, right.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Well, this thing got damaged, whatever. I'll just print out a new one, whether it's paper or 3D printing.
Yeah. So that's nice. And I think we're on the verge of something, and the reason so many artists are going after this, and so many players are now interested in this, I think it's the beginning, and they better be paying attention to this, or else the hobby's just going to get away from them, because the kind of schizophrenic.
When has the lumbering behemoth of GW ever kind of followed the trend, right?
Yeah, they're gonna. It's going to be an ugly thing when people, when they're just like, your miniatures are great, your rules suck, and your miniatures are so insanely expensive, and you can't even get them produced. You can't even get them out the door. So,
what are we waiting for?
What are we waiting for? So that was kind of the happy thing that came out of all of this kind of lockdown and ugly confusion, and kind of like yearning for the more traditional Warhammer fantasy.
Right. Oh, cool.
It still lives on.
I look forward to playing.
Yeah. And it's a great community too, really supportive. So you see a lot of people, trying different things and just, supporting each other about how to paint stuff. So, all right.
Cool.
So did you bring something?
Oh, I brought something.
Yes.
Talk about something I've enjoyed on itch, and no one can see it because it's also the print copy, is Apex Predator by Peach Garden Games. It's basically a solo game that uses cards and dice to kind of replicate or emulate Monster Hunter.
Nice. Oh, great.
So you fold out, not fold out, but you make a little 4x4 grid of cards, or 5x5 or 6, and that's your little map that you walk through. And each card is kind of like a little oracle that says what kind of goes on. And sometimes you roll a die and you're trying to hunt a monster. And it's just like really stripped down and simple, but enjoyable. And there's also rules for, okay, if you do defeat the monster, if you want to do a little campaign, here's your little bonus, or here's how it affects your character for the next quest you go on. So, because the whole thing of Monster Hunter is you fight monsters, you kill them, you make better stuff from their bits to fight bigger ones, which is in this game. So
Nice.
I was really enjoying it, and I thought it's pretty cool.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Oh,
and if
good.
you're going to do itch, remember Friday is the 100% goes to creator. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put a link. Yeah, we'll put a link to just basically, and maybe your link on the
Oh,
store
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I think that's there every week.
It is, yeah.
But
Cool.
Great. All right. So where can people find you?
Well, I guess on itch or Twitter at Hivemind, HYVEMYND.
Nice. All right. And so there'll be some more. So look for some kind of Warmaster coverage for this week. And if you'd like to support the weekly and what we're doing here, please visit patreon.com/upturntable. And you can follow us on Twitter and the website and everything. Everything is Upturned Table.
Ooh, nice.
So find us on all of those channels. And
Social medias.
yes. So we'll be doing this again next week, and it's good to have you back.
Yeah,
it's
back.
nice
no health
that,
problems. Yeah, all right.
until one of us is hospitalized,
Yeah,
we'll
right.
be back. All right. So, we'll be back next week. See you then.
Later, mortals.
Goodbye. Nice. Hey, Joe. Thanks for stopping by. So I'm assuming everything came out okay because I didn't get any warning messages. All right. See you later.
Bye.